All right, back here on the Glenn Beck program, and I have, after being initially skeptical out of fear of the whole idea of a runaway convention, because I'm a total depravity kind of guy and I have zero trust for human nature whatsoever. I have an extremely high view of human worth and dignity because we are the Imago Dei. We are the only beings in all of the universe made in the image and likeness of our Creator. But because we are also fallen, I have the exact opposite level of regard for human nature. So I can be very distrusting of people, beginning with myself. All right. So I was initially skeptical, and then we got closer and closer to the end of the ball game here. We are at least at a 2-minute warning as a civilization. We are at least there. At least there. If we are not living through Romans 1 kind of stuff, we have an increasingly growing segment of our society that is trying to push us to that brink at the very least. So we are at least at the 2-minute warning part of the football game when you realize, some of the traditional, more conventional methods of winning here may not be as open to us. We might need to use some things that are within the rules. They're in the rules, but they're a little bit more radical, a little bit more risky, because nothing's riskier than having the game go final and we're the losing team. And then it doesn't get replayed. That's what the word final means. It means it's over, right? And so after initially being skeptical of a convention of states, I've now become a full-throated advocate of it. I've spoken on behalf of it, whether it's here in my state where I live now, Iowa, my original home state of Michigan, written about it extensively, become good friends with one of the architects of it that joins us now, Mark Meckler from the Convention of States. It's good to have you with us, brother. How are you?
It's good to be here, and good to see you wearing a Wolverine shirt. I got to say, it was a good weekend.
It was a very good weekend. So, yes, go blue. I know we are on my old hometown station that I grew up listening to Michigan football on when I was a kid, Wood AM in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I listened to that growing up, so I wanted to give those folks a shout-out over there, of course. But let's get to a football game of a little bit more serious import, at least when we look at it as an analogy. The desecration of Independence Hall last Thursday, that's what I'm calling it. I mean, it really was a desecration. That wasn't a speech. I can't think of a moment in American history where a national political leader spoke about a large segment of our own people the way that he did. And I thought it was a cynical attempt to bait our people into acting out worse than whatever they were entrapped into on January the 6th. But I also think that they nihilistically mean this, Mark. I mean, they have pursued policies as if they think this way about large segments of the people, and it's not just campaign rhetoric. So with that in mind, I think whatever hour of that you thought we were in before last Thursday, the clock at least went at least a minute or two later, didn't it?
It absolutely did. I mean, what you saw in bold relief, in colors, in graphic representation, is the new Democratic Fascist Party, the NDFP. That's what the Democrats have become today. Joe Biden used all the symbology of a fascist rising government. He used fascist language. He vilified his opponents in a way that essentially potentially leads to genocide. I mean, what he's doing is dehumanizing the opposition, saying that the opposition must be silenced, pushed from the political square. Important to remember Mussolini's definition of fascism. The inventor of fascism said it's everything inside the state, nothing outside the state, and importantly, nothing against the state. Mm-hmm. That's the definition of today's new Democrat Fascist Party.
He also said over the weekend that he's been fighting Big Pharma his entire career. He beat them this year. Mark, it was almost exactly a year ago that he announced the worst executive order, in my opinion, in all of American history. It literally stuff out of like Left Behind books. You couldn't win or you couldn't work unless you took a jab, which his own CDC director had admitted a full month prior won't stop you from even getting or transmitting the virus, but you have to get this jab anyway. And now we are seeing all the risk profiles, the VAERS database surging in reports, what we're seeing with data all over the world. The study in Thailand a month ago, 18% of teenage boys had abnormal EKGs after getting a full dose of Pfizer. The Israeli data, the UK data, our own data, the study from the British Medical Journal, the risk profile and everything else. He was willing to risk the infertility rates of many Americans, the nervous systems of many Americans, the cardiovascular systems of many Americans, the hearts of many Americans, the long-term health of our children, in order for you to work. If that's not a violation of every last morsel of the Constitution and social compact. At this point, I don't know what is. And I just think it when they say what they really mean and then act on it, we should probably listen to them, Mark.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And again, I'm going to point back to fascism. This is totalitarian fascist control. It always starts this way, by the way. They never say, hey, we're going to do something really evil. They say, we're going to do something that's really good for you. It's really good for society. Jonah Goldberg wrote a great book about this. I'm not a huge Goldberg fan anymore. But
does he read his books anymore? That's a topic for another day. Does Jonah Goldberg still read the books he once wrote? Do you know the answer to that? You know what? No one knows the answer to that. So continue on with what you were saying. Go ahead.
Likely no, but liberal fascism is the best examination of the history of fascism in the world. And it says it always starts with liberals. They always say that they've got some great utopian scheme that they want everybody to adopt. And when you won't adopt it, ultimately they're going to force you to do it. And if that doesn't work, what they're going to do is throw you in prison and ultimately kill you. That's where I see this government headed. They're going to throw their opponents in prison. We're already seeing them do this. They're doing raids on innocent people. They're calling parents domestic terrorists. The FBI is targeting people, 87,000 new IRS agents to target people like you and me, specifically because we don't agree with what they're doing.
Which brings us to this election. And I think it's at least 85% the Republicans are going to win the House. And we had a conversation with one of my best buddies, Chip Roy, about that last hour and what's their agenda and what will they do. And you can just hear in Chip's voice, he's fighting his own caucus to get them to do anything with it. Okay. It's about 65%, I would say right now, that I think they'll win the Senate. But as long as we've got old Ditch over there running things, he'll just keep driving us into one, right? You know? And so a lot of our people, especially as we're getting baited into this hopelessness and you're terrible and we're going to round you up, and you're not a citizen, and you shouldn't have a job, you shouldn't have a vote, we can steal your elections, we can do whatever we want to you. This hopelessness, this baiting, we're being baited here into a certain outcome that the spirit of the age would love to see essentially create unfathomable devastation of our way of life and really of the last bastion of liberty in the world. And I know a lot of our people, Mark, are increasingly feeling hopeless, that my vote won't even be counted. Even if I go vote for these fake Republicans, my vote won't even count. And then if it does count, they'll win and not do anything. That hopelessness will not just remain playing within the system forever. So is there another option? And the answer to that question is yes. We'll get into that here with Mark Meckler from Convention of States in just a moment. So I believe that a Convention of States might be the last opportunity we have within our constitutional framework to save our constitutional republic. And I think the spirit of the age is showing that maybe it agrees, because it is beginning to attack the Convention of States movement after ignoring it for many years. The guy who runs the Convention of States for us is Mark Meckler. He's our guest here on the Glenn Beck program. So explain to our audience, who of course are going to be very familiar with this process, but just in case, one more time, how does this work? It's right out of the Constitution. I mean, this isn't some cockamamie, harebrained scheme. It's right out of the Constitution, Mark. And why is it that if you guys are really a false flag operation and are going to make it even easier for the spirit of the age to finish us off, why are you guys getting attacked so mercilessly by them at the moment then?
Yeah, so let's start with just sort of how it works, the basics. Article 5 of the Constitution contains two ways to amend the Constitution. The first is the way we've always done, 27 amendments. When two-thirds of both houses of Congress call for an amendment, they can then put that amendment out to the states for ratification by 3/4 of the states. The alternative method, if the federal government becomes unresponsive, which clearly it is right now, is when 2/3 of the states request to gather in convention, they can then debate and propose amendments. In other words, make suggestions to the states. And those suggestions go out the same way as they did from Congress to 3/4 of the states for ratification. So what we're doing right now is putting out a resolution. 19 of the requisite 34 states have passed that resolution already, so we're way more than halfway. And it calls for discussing fiscal restraints on the federal government, like a balanced budget amendment, tax caps, spending caps, et cetera. Anything that would impose term limits on Congress, members of Congress, but also, importantly, the deep state, federal officials, bureaucrats, staffers, and then finally, and I think most importantly, anything that would impose scope and jurisdiction limits on the federal government, like saying, no, you can't be involved in education or energy or in your sweet spot, our sweet spot, you can't be involved in healthcare. Get out of our business. So these are things we can do. And then you're right. We do have opposition. And even by what I would now call tools or willing conspirators on the right who say this is going to be a runaway convention and we're going to lose our Constitution. Those are absurd arguments. And by the way, if you listen to the recent book put out by Senator Russ Feingold, the socialist from Wisconsin, who was defeated by Ron Johnson, he says this is a serious effort, and it's the thing that liberals should most fear. That book came out in the last week. It's been covered extensively in the New York Times favorably, on ABC favorably, and pretty much everywhere else. The left is going crazy against convention of states right now because they know, as you say, this is our chance to pull the ripcord and stop leftist overreach and restore the Constitution.
I've made the analogy in the past when I've spoken for you guys of comparing the Article 5 convention to a Hail Mary pass. That it is something that you don't do cavalierly. You don't make this choice if you're down in a football game, with most of the quarter to go, or even with, say, 5 minutes to go, because it is not necessarily the most high percentage play out there. It can be intercepted. To act as if that can't happen, I don't think is being honest, intellectually honest. But when you're sitting it towards the end of a game, and the game will go final, and if it goes final and you're behind on the scoreboard, that means you lost. Final. That game will not be played again. It will not be replayed. You lost the game. To just sit there and continue to act as if you can Hank Stram this thing and matriculate the ball down the field in the final seconds of the game is not realistic, and that's when you throw that pass. If you're worried about losing our Constitution, tell me exactly what part of it we have retained right this minute. It's a dead letter to at least half of this country right now. And a lot of the people that we are going to elect to defend it have really no interest in defending it, or at least they lack the testicular fortitude to do so. We don't know what a border is. We don't know what a boy or girl is. We're doing meatball surgery on our children. Should I go on? If this is not the last few minutes of the game, I don't even want to contemplate then what the last few minutes of the game look like, Mark. This is, in my view, the time now that you go for the big play to try to win the game before it goes final.
Yeah, and to carry on your analogy, and I think this is important, what we have in Congress right now are at best third-string quarterbacks, bench warmers, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy. These are the guys that are going to lead the charge to restore our constitutional republic. If you're putting your hope in them, then I think you're putting your hope nowhere, and it's likely to be trampled underfoot. I put my hope in the American people, more broadly speaking. You speak to a lot of great patriots every day all across the country, converse with them, dialogue with them. I do the same. I've been in 48 states in the last few years. I know the grit that is still out there in the heartland of America, and I believe that we can restore the republic by using the tool the founders gave us for just this moment. Ask
yourself a strategic question. What is more likely to be the effective long-term play? A, we vote these Republicans over and over again and try to take some of the names you just mentioned out in these primaries where we get outspent all the time, 70-1. Okay, that's one option. The other option is we call an Article 5 Convention of States and we prove Samuel Adams was right, that it's always been a committed minority that enacts the most social change. And we just out-organize and out-galvanize at a grassroots level to make sure our people are at that convention and get the job done. Those are your two options. Short of, let's go back to Gettysburg or Antietam, which I believe absolutely the bowels of hell is trying to provoke us to. And do not forget, more Americans died in Antietam than any other singular event in American history, okay? And the Civil War was so successful that the political battles that led to it and then came from the end of it, we are still largely discussing and talking about here today, 150 years later, all right? So those are really your two options on the table within the current political schema that we have right now. Which of those two do you believe is most likely to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I agree with you. We're at a fork in the road right now in American history, and the country's going to come apart one way or another. So one way is the way you described. It's Antietam. It's the violence. And I think for people who say we should do that, they don't understand what war actually looks like. If they want to know, they should talk to a veteran who's actually been in combat. Or they should just look at footage from Ukraine right now if they want to see what a real war in a real modern country looks like. It's hideous, and there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. And like you said, it doesn't really resolve anything. We're still fighting those fights today. And so our options are that or go back to federalism. And the only road back to federalism is to call a convention of states. That's why the founders put this in there. And look, Steve, I know you talk a little bit about the potential risk. I just want to say about the risk. It takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of convention. And I'll challenge people. If you think you're worried about an amendment that can come out of convention and be ratified by 38 states, tell me what those 38 states are and what the amendment is, because I've never had anybody able to do that in over 9 years of promoting this cause.
Where are you at right now in terms of building a critical mass?
So we're at 19 states. We have over 5 million people involved. And really, I think if you want to know where we're at as far as building critical mass, look at what the left says. Our opponents on the right, the fringe on the right, say to us that we work for Soros, we're leftists, we're globalists. But Russ Feingold, a former U.S. senator, just put out a book on this. The New York Times is talking negatively against us. ABC, MSNBC. We had a hit piece recently from Business Insider, a leftist business publication. That was run all over the internet, including on Vice. And AP did a hit piece against us. The left knows that we're getting close to convention. There are 31 states with both legislatures controlled by Republicans. 34, you get to convention. So we're very, very close.
People want to learn more about this, Mark. Where can they go?
Go to conventionofstates.com because it's important. Look, Steve, you work every day to educate people. Then the question becomes, what do we do now? And the answer is get involved. Go to conventionofstates.com, sign up today, and get involved in the fight.
If you guys are getting funded by Soros, brother, I'm charging a lot more for my next Convention of States speaking engagement. All right?
Well, we're looking forward to having you. It's going to be good, Steve.
All right, one more time, give out the website for people to learn more or to sign up if they want to.
Yep, conventionofstates.com. Click on the Take Action tab. Volunteer today, conventionofstates.com.
All right, good to see you, brother. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks are willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.